The November wind cut through the broken windows of the abandoned textile factory like 1,000 frozen knives. Seattle's forgotten industrial graveyard stretched for miles along Highway 99, a wasteland of rust and regret where the ghosts of America's manufacturing past came to die. The temperature had dropped to 28 degrees, cold enough to kill. Nathan Cole moved through the darkness with nothing but a flickering flashlight and the weight of his failures pressing down on his shoulders. His worn work boots crunched over broken glass. His breath created small clouds that disappeared into the shadows, like prayers no one would answer. He was 42 years old, a father, a widower, a man who had once worn tailored suits and commanded respect in boardrooms across the Pacific Northwest. Now he was scavenging through abandoned buildings like a desperate animal, searching for copper pipes or scrap metal, anything he could sell, anything to bridge the $340 he still needed before rent came due in 5 days. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was safe at Mrs. Henderson's apartment across the hall, probably drawing butterflies like she always did, filling page after page with wings of every color imaginable. Nathan had told her he was going to find some things for work. He couldn't bring himself to say the truth. The last morning with Catherine played in his mind like a movie he couldn't stop watching. She'd been making pancakes, Lily's favorite, the ones with chocolate chips arranged in smiley faces. Catherine had turned to him, spatula in hand, flour dusting her nose, and said something he'd never forgotten. "Promise me something, Nathan. If anything ever happens to me, promise you won't stop believing in people. Promise you won't let the world make you hard." He'd laughed, pulled her close, kissed the flour off her nose. "Nothing's going to happen to you." 3 months later, she was gone. Her heart had simply stopped in the middle of the night, worn down by years of stress and worry, and a condition that had been lurking inside her like a time bomb. And Nathan had broken every promise he'd ever made. 4 years ago, everything had been different. He'd been senior structural engineer at Pemberton and Associates. He'd had a beautiful wife, a promising career, a future that stretched out before him like a golden road. Then the world had collapsed, his career destroyed by corporate politics, his reputation shattered by decisions made in boardrooms he'd never entered. Catherine's heart condition worsening under the weight of stress and uncertainty until 2 years after he lost everything, she'd simply stopped breathing in her sleep. Since then, it had been survival mode, taking whatever jobs he could find, making sure Lily had food and shelter and love, even when he had nothing left to give. The flashlight beam swept across rusted machinery and collapsed support beams. Decades of decay surrounded him like a tomb. Then he heard it, a whimper, faint, human, small. Nathan froze. His heart slammed against his ribs. "Hello?" Silence stretched for 3 eternal seconds. Then another sound. Definitely a cry. A child's cry. He moved faster now, following the sound through the labyrinth of shadows. His mind raced with possibilities, each more terrible than the last. Who would leave a child in a place like this? In weather like this? The flashlight beam found her, yet a small figure huddled in the corner like a discarded doll. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, curled into a tight ball against the concrete wall. She wore what had once been an expensive red dress, now filthy and torn. Her entire body convulsed with violent shivers. "Oh my God!" Nathan dropped to his knees beside her, immediately pulling off his worn jacket and wrapping it around her tiny frame. The cold bit into his arms, but he barely noticed, because when his hands touched her skin, he felt ice. Dangerous cold. Deadly cold. "Sweetheart, can you hear me? I'm here now. You're safe." The girl's eyes didn't focus on him. They stared straight ahead, vacant and unseeing. And in that moment, Nathan understood. She was blind. "Can you tell me your name?" Her lips moved, but barely any sound emerged. She was shutting down. Her body was giving up its fight against the cold. Nathan had taken first aid training years ago, back when he still had a career that required such things. He recognized hypothermia when he saw it. This child was dying. He pulled her into his arms, pressing her against his chest, trying to transfer whatever warmth his body could offer. She weighed almost nothing. A feather, a whisper, a life slipping away in the darkness. "Stay with me, sweetheart." His voice cracked. "Don't you dare give up." Cold. The word was barely audible, more breath than sound. "I know, baby. I know you're cold. We're going to get you warm. I promise." He rubbed her arms, her back, trying to keep her blood flowing. "Can you tell me your name?" A pause, a struggle. Then, "Hope. Hope. Sterling. Hope. That's a beautiful name." Nathan's voice broke as he lifted her carefully. "I'm Nathan. I'm going to take care of you. You're safe now." He carried her through the darkness toward the exit. Each step felt like a mile. Each second felt like an hour. The cold outside hit him like a physical force, but he pushed through it. His pickup truck sat 30 yards away, and those 30 yards might as well have been 30 miles. He placed her gently in the passenger seat, turned the engine on, cranked the heat to maximum, wrapped her in the emergency blanket he kept in the back for Lily. His phone showed 2 bars of signal. Thank God. He dialed 911 with shaking hands. 911, what's your emergency?" "I found a little girl, maybe 8 years old, blind, severe hypothermia. We're at the old textile factory off Highway 99 Southside. She needs an ambulance immediately." He paused, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Her name is Hope Sterling." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, a pause that lasted too long. "Did you say Hope Sterling?" "Yes, why?" "Sir," the dispatcher's voice trembled. "That child has been missing for over 6 hours. There's an active Amber Alert across 3 states. Stay exactly where you are. Emergency services are en route immediately." Nathan's stomach dropped. 6 hours. This little girl had been abandoned in this frozen hellscape for 6 hours, while temperatures plummeted from afternoon cold to deadly night freeze. He looked at her. Her lips were still blue. Her small body still trembled. But she was breathing. She was fighting. Another hour in this cold, and she would have been dead. Sirens began to wail in the distance. "Help is coming," Nathan said softly. "You're going to be okay." Her small hand, still cold as ice, reached out and found his finger. She held on with what little strength she had left. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise." The ambulance arrived within 7 minutes. Right behind it came 4 police cars, an FBI vehicle, and a black Mercedes SUV that gleamed like a midnight mirror under the flashing lights. Paramedics swarmed Nathan's truck, their voices sharp with urgency. "Female child, approximately 8 years old, severe hypothermia. Core temperature 89 degrees. We need to get her to Harborview immediately." From the Mercedes, a woman emerged. She was in her early 30s, blonde hair disheveled, face swollen from hours of crying. She moved with the desperate energy of a mother who had been living in hell and had only now glimpsed the possibility of escape. The moment she saw the gurney, a sound escaped her throat, something between a sob and a scream. "Hope! My baby!" She ran toward the ambulance, stumbling twice. "Is she alive? Please tell me she's alive." "She's alive, Miss Sterling. We're stabilizing her now." The woman collapsed against the ambulance, her body shaking with relief. Then she turned, her tear-streaked face searching the chaos until her eyes found Nathan. Something in those eyes felt oddly familiar, though Nathan couldn't place why. "You found her?" Nathan nodded. "What's your name?" "Nathan Cole, ma'am." "Nathan Cole." She repeated it slowly, like she was carving it into her heart. "Thank you for saving my daughter's life." Then the ambulance doors closed, and the vehicle screamed away into the darkness. Nathan stood alone in the cold, surrounded by flashing lights and uniformed strangers. He had no way of knowing that the woman he just met was connected to him in ways that would destroy everything he thought he knew about his past and his future. 2 hours later, Nathan sat in an FBI field office, answering questions for the third time. Agent Walsh sat across from him alongside Seattle Police Detective Ramirez. "So you were at the factory to look for salvage materials?" Nathan felt shame flush his face. "Yes, sir. I lost my job 3 months ago. I've been trying to make ends meet." Detective Ramirez held up her hand. "Mr. Cole, you're not in trouble. Your actions tonight saved a child's life." Agent Walsh leaned forward. "Hope Sterling disappeared from her home in Bellevue at approximately 10:30 this morning. Her mother, Serena Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Industries, reported her missing at 11:15 a.m. He slid a surveillance photograph across the table. A severe-looking woman in her 50s with graying hair. "Do you recognize this woman?" "No, sir." "This is Margaret Winters. She was Hope's nanny for 8 months. We arrested her 40 minutes ago at SeaTac Airport attempting to board a flight to Mexico." Nathan felt sick. "The nanny did this?" "It gets worse." Agent Walsh's expression darkened. During interrogation, Winters revealed she had an accomplice inside Sterling Industries, someone who provided her with security codes, schedules, and the exact location of that abandoned factory. Nathan's blood ran cold. "Who?" "We're still investigating, but whoever it is, they're still out there. The ransom demand was $2 million. The accomplices who were supposed to pick up Hope panicked when the Amber Alert went viral. But Winters had already abandoned the child." "She was leaving that child to die," Nathan said, his hands curling into fists. "If you hadn't been there, Mr. Cole, Hope wouldn't have survived until morning. You found her at exactly the right moment." Nathan visited Harborview Hospital 2 days later. Mrs. Henderson had practically pushed him out the door. "That mother needs to thank you properly, Nathan. And that little girl needs to feel the presence of the man who saved her life." He'd put on his cleanest jeans and brought Lily, because leaving her felt wrong. She'd been clutching a handmade card all morning, construction paper covered in glitter butterflies and the words "Get well soon" written in careful purple crayon. The private wing of the hospital spoke of money that Nathan couldn't even imagine. Standing outside Hope's room, Nathan felt completely out of place. Then the door opened and Serena Sterling stood there. Up close, she looked younger than he'd expected. Maybe 33. Sharp, intelligent features softened by exhaustion. Blonde hair in a simple ponytail, jeans and a soft sweater instead of the expensive dress. She looked almost normal, almost like someone Nathan might know. "Mr. Cole, please come in." Hope sat in bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and flowers. Her cheeks were pink instead of blue. Her unseeing eyes turned toward them as they entered, and her face broke into a beautiful smile. "Nathan, you're Lily's daddy. You told me about her when I was cold." Lily gasped. Then she walked straight to the bed without hesitation, holding out her card. "I made this for you. It has butterflies on it. Can I tell you what they look like?" "Yes, please." Hope reached out and Lily guided her fingers across the glitter and construction paper. "This one is purple. That's like soft and pretty, my teacher says. And this one is yellow, which is warm like sunshine. And this big one is blue, like cool water or the sky." "I can feel the sparkle," Hope said, delighted. "They're bumpy." "That's glitter. I put extra because my daddy says you were really brave." Within minutes, the two girls were chattering like they'd known each other their whole lives. Lily described the view from the hospital window, the buildings, the gray November sky, the tiny cars moving far below. Hope asked questions about everything, hungry for details about a world she'd never seen. "What do clouds look like? Really look like?" Like fluffy cotton balls, but huge. And sometimes they look like animals if you squint." I don't know what squinting is. It's when you make your eyes small, like this. Lily paused. Oh, sorry. It's okay, Hope said, squeezing her hand. You can tell me about squinting. I want to know everything. Serena touched Nathan's arm gently, guiding him to a corner where they could talk while the girls continued their conversation. I don't know how to begin thanking you, she said quietly, tears filling her eyes. The doctor said another hour, and you don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same thing. But they didn't. You did. She wiped her eyes. I want to help you, Nathan. I've done some research. I know you lost your job. I know you're struggling. Nathan stiffened. I didn't save Hope because I wanted anything in return. I know, which is exactly why I want to help. She handed him a business card. Let me help you find a real job. You have an engineering background, don't you? Nathan's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. Different life. Skills like that don't disappear. You gave me back everything that matters. Let me give you something meaningful in return. Nathan looked at Lily, chattering excitedly with her new friend. He thought about the eviction notice on his kitchen table. The pride that had kept him in poverty while his daughter wore shoes that were too small for her feet. Okay, he said finally. For Lily, I'll call you. 3 weeks later, Nathan stood in the lobby of Sterling Industries, still not quite believing this was his life. One coffee meeting had turned into a job interview. One interview had become a job offer. Facilities manager with benefits, a real salary, and stability he hadn't known in years. The work was good. His engineering mind, dormant for so long, was waking up. He found himself noticing inefficiencies, suggesting improvements, catching problems before they became disasters. For the first time in years, Nathan felt like he was using his brain instead of just surviving, and the girls were inseparable. Every weekend, Lily and Hope had play dates. Sometimes at Nathan's modest apartment, where they'd build pillow forts and pretend they were queens of their own kingdom. Lily would describe everything in the apartment to Hope. The crack in the ceiling that looked like a river. The way the afternoon light made shadows dance on the wall. The exact shade of orange that the sunset turned everything. Sometimes they played at Serena's mansion, where they'd explore a backyard bigger than Nathan's entire building. Hope would guide Lily through the garden by sound and smell, identifying flowers by their fragrance, knowing exactly where every stepping stone was placed. She's teaching me to see with my other senses, Lily told Nathan one evening, her green eyes wide with wonder. Did you know you can hear the difference between sunshine and shade? I didn't know that. Hope says sunshine sounds warmer. I'm trying to learn. Mrs. Henderson had taken to calling them the sisters with a knowing smile, because the truth was obvious to everyone who looked. These two girls had found something precious in each other, something that transcended their different worlds. The playdates meant Nathan saw Serena often, and somewhere along the way, something shifted. It started innocently. Serena would stay for coffee when dropping Hope off. Coffee turned into dinner, take out pizza while the girls played in Lily's room. They'd talk about everything: parenthood, loss, the weight of being responsible for a tiny life that depended on you completely. Nathan told her about Catherine, about grief that still caught him off guard at random moments. A song on the radio, the smell of her favorite flowers, the empty side of the bed that never stopped feeling wrong. Serena told him about building her company alone, about the loneliness of being at the top, where everyone wanted something from you and no one saw the real you. I don't have it all together, she admitted one evening, holding a glass of wine she'd barely touched. Everyone thinks I do, but I'm terrified most of the time. That kid adores you, Nathan said firmly. Anyone can see that. The look Serena gave him then, grateful and vulnerable, made his heart do something complicated. something he hadn't felt since Catherine. And that's when Nathan started noticing things he shouldn't. The way she laughed, the way their hands would almost touch, and neither pulled away quite fast enough. It was late on a Tuesday evening, 2 months after the rescue, when everything changed. Serena was in her home office preparing materials for Sterling Industries' anniversary celebration. She opened a folder of photographs from 7 years ago, and there he was, Nathan, but not the Nathan she knew now. This Nathan wore a tailored suit. He stood beside a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He looked successful, confident, alive in a way he wasn't anymore. Serena's heart began to pound. She studied the caption. Project team from Pemberton and Associates, contractors for Sterling Industries Riverside Development. Her hands started to shake. She knew that project. She'd been VP of operations then. That project had been a disaster. Cost overruns, timeline delays, and then the structural failure. Serena pulled up old files with trembling fingers, incident reports, lawsuit documents. And there it was, Nathan Cole, Senior Structural Engineer, Pemberton and Associates. Engineering concerns flagged, structural integrity issues. Executive decision by Caroline Sterling, VP Operations, proceed with modifications. Memories flooded back. There had been concerns raised. An engineer had flagged potential structural issues. He'd wanted delays, additional testing, but the project was already over budget. The board had been furious. Serena, then going by her full legal name, Caroline, had been under enormous pressure. She'd reviewed the reports, made the executive decision, proceed. 6 months later, part of the structure failed during a winter storm. Nobody died, but there were injuries, lawsuits, a media nightmare. The engineer who'd raised concerns had been scapegoated, fired, his reputation destroyed. Now Serena found his wife's name, Dr. Catherine Cole, consultant for Sterling Industries' medical device division, found Catherine's death certificate, dated 2 years after the incident. Cause of death, heart failure, exacerbated by chronic stress. Serena felt like she might vomit. She'd destroyed his career with a signature. The stress had contributed to his wife's death. She'd ruined his life completely, and she'd never even known his name. And 7 years later, he'd saved her daughter. Serena sat alone until dawn, staring at that photograph. She was falling in love with the man whose life she'd destroyed, and he had no idea. Over the following weeks, Serena tried to make amends without revealing why. She recommended Nathan for a promotion, senior facilities engineer. She arranged for Lily to attend Hope's private school on scholarship. She found reasons to support him through every company benefit she could justify. Nathan never questioned it. He thought she was being kind. But Serena knew the truth. She was helping him rebuild his life because she'd destroyed it in the first place. Every promotion was penance. Every benefit was blood money. The guilt was eating her alive. And the feelings kept growing because she wasn't falling for Nathan out of guilt. She was falling for him because of who he was. The gentle way he parented, his thoughtful insights, the way he listened like what she said actually mattered. "Do you ever think about getting back into engineering?" Serena asked one evening. Nathan stiffened. "That part of my life is over." "But you loved it." "Loving something doesn't matter if the world decides you're not good enough to do it anymore." His voice was quiet, filled with old pain. "Some doors don't reopen. You just learn to walk past them." The ache in his words made her heart crack. She'd slammed that door. She'd thrown away the key. 3 months after the kidnapping, the FBI made a breakthrough. Agent Walsh called Serena at 6 a.m., his voice tight with urgency. "We've identified Margaret Winter's accomplice inside Sterling Industries." Serena's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Victor Hale, your former chief financial officer." The floor seemed to shift beneath her feet. Victor had been with the company for 12 years. She'd trusted him with everything: financial strategies, board presentations, confidential projections. He resigned 8 months ago after you discovered financial irregularities. He provided Winters with your schedule, security codes, everything. The ransom was supposed to fund his escape to a country with no extradition treaty. But there was more. Much more. Mrs. Sterling, we recovered Hale's laptop. He had prepared a detailed expose of the Riverside Development Project. Every internal memo, every decision you made as VP of Operations, including the name of the engineer whose concerns you overruled. Serena stopped breathing. He scheduled this document to be automatically emailed to the Seattle Times, the Post-Intelligencer, and 3 investigative journalists. The email is set to send in 72 hours unless Hale personally cancels it from a secure location. Can you stop it? Our tech team is trying, but Hale used military-grade encryption. We haven't cracked it yet. The countdown is still running. 72 hours. In 3 days, Nathan would learn the truth from a newspaper headline instead of from her. Serena's hands trembled. What exactly does the document say? Everything. The engineer who was wrongfully blamed, his wife's death, the cost-cutting decisions that led to the structural failure. Ms. Sterling, if this goes public, it won't just damage your reputation, it will destroy it. And the lawsuits alone could sink the company. Serena hung up the phone and sat motionless for a long time. The walls of her office seemed to close in around her. She had 72 hours to make a choice. Tell Nathan herself, and maybe, just maybe, salvage something from the wreckage, or let him find out from strangers and lose everything. The next morning, journalists started calling. Someone at the Seattle Times had received an anonymous tip, a preview of what was coming. They were asking questions about Riverside Development, about Pemberton and Associates, about an engineer named Nathan Cole. Word spread through Sterling Industries like wildfire. By noon, old newsletters and project files were circulating through email chains. Someone had dug up archived materials from the anniversary files. People were connecting dots, whispering in hallways, sending encrypted messages. Serena watched the clock. 60 hours, 52, 48. She drafted a dozen texts to Nathan, deleted everyone. At 40 hours remaining, she drove to his apartment, sat in her car for 20 minutes, couldn't make herself get out. At 32 hours, she called him, hung up before it rang. At 24 hours, she finally understood something. She wasn't protecting Nathan by staying silent. She was protecting herself, and that was the most cowardly thing she'd ever done. Nathan found the newsletter in the break room at 2:47 p.m., with less than 18 hours remaining on Hale's countdown. Someone had left it on the table. Deliberately, he realized later. An old newsletter from 7 years ago, celebrating some project milestone. There was his photo, from when he'd still worn suits and believed the world rewarded people who did the right thing. The caption read, "Sterling Industries celebrates partnership with Pemberton and Associates on Riverside Development Project." And right below his photo, Caroline Sterling, VP of Operations, oversees successful project completion. Caroline Sterling, Serena. Nathan's hands began to shake. He stared at the name, reading it over and over, willing it to change. But the truth was there in black and white. Nathan drove to her house that evening. The girls were at Mrs. Henderson's apartment. He'd arranged it specifically. Whatever happened next, they didn't need to see it. Serena's face went pale the moment she saw him in the doorway. The newsletter was in his hand. His expression was carved from stone. "I need to ask you something," Nathan said, his voice controlled with visible effort. "And I need you to be honest." He held up the newsletter. "Were you the VP who overruled my safety concerns on the Riverside project?" Serena's legs gave out. She caught herself on the doorframe. "Yes," she whispered. "I was VP of Operations. I reviewed the concerns. I made the decision to proceed. I was wrong. You were wrong, and I lost everything. Nathan's voice rose, years of pain finding their target. My career, my reputation, my wife. I know. You knew. His eyes widened. How long? Tears streamed down her face. A month. I found your photo when I was preparing for the anniversary celebration. I wanted to tell you. I was terrified. Terrified of what? Losing your charity case? Terrified of losing you. The words tore from her throat. I was going to lose you before I ever had you. And the girls, Lily and Hope, they're like sisters now. I couldn't bear to destroy that too. Nathan stared at her, chest heaving with emotions he couldn't control. Is that what this has all been? Guilt? The job? The promotion? Just you trying to ease your conscience? No. Serena moved toward him, but he stepped back. Yes, I wanted to help because I felt responsible, but it became so much more than that. She stopped, wiping her eyes. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you, but I did. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. You fell in love with me, Nathan repeated slowly. The man whose life you destroyed. Yes, because you're kind, because you are an amazing father, because you see past my title to who I actually am. Her voice broke. I know I don't deserve any of those feelings, but they're not something I can pretend away. Silence filled the space between them. Outside, the Seattle night was cold and clear. Finally, Nathan's shoulders dropped. The rage drained from his face, leaving something sadder, more complicated. I don't hate you, he said. Serena's head snapped up. I wish I could. It would be simpler. His voice was raw. But I keep thinking about that night at the factory. The way you looked at Hope, that was genuine. The way you've been with both girls, no one can fake that. And these past 3 months, those conversations, those dinners. He met her eyes. Those feelings aren't something I can pretend away either. Neither can I, Serena whispered. He closed his eyes, wrestling with something inside himself. When he opened them again, they were wet. You made a terrible mistake. You destroyed my life without ever knowing my name. You made a decision in a boardroom that killed my wife and left my daughter without a mother. Serena sobbed quietly. But you didn't do it maliciously. You didn't know me. You were doing your job under impossible pressure, and you made the wrong call. That doesn't make it okay. It doesn't bring Catherine back. He paused, his jaw tight. But it makes it human, and I've spent too many years being angry at shadows. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. A copper butterfly, crudely shaped, handmade. The metal caught the light like a tiny flame. I found this in that factory the night I found Hope, Nathan said quietly. I was going to sell it for scrap, but something about it felt important, so I kept it. Lily saw it on my dresser and told me butterflies mean transformation, that they start as one thing and become something else entirely. He placed the butterfly in Serena's hand. Maybe that's what we need. Time to transform. Time to figure out if something new can grow from everything that was destroyed. Serena clutched the butterfly, tears flowing freely. How much time? However long it takes. His voice softened. The girls can still see each other. I won't take that from Lily. And you and me? He paused. Have dinner with me next Friday. Somewhere neutral. Just two people trying to figure out if they can build something from the wreckage. Yes, Serena said immediately. Yes. Nathan nodded once. He looked at her for a long moment. At the woman who had made a devastating mistake, at the mother who loved her daughter, at the person he'd somehow found himself falling for, despite every reason not to. Then he walked away into the Seattle night. Nathan drove home through the empty streets. The city lights blurred past his window like scattered stars, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the hour. He thought about Friday, a restaurant somewhere neutral, maybe that Italian place downtown where nobody would recognize either of them. Two people sitting across from each other, trying to find common ground in the wreckage of 7 years. He thought about Lily and Hope, probably still awake at Mrs. Henderson's apartment, whispering secrets under a blanket fort and making plans that only best friends could understand. Whatever happened between him and Serena, those two little girls had found something precious, something worth protecting. The copper butterfly sat on his passenger seat, catching the streetlights like a small flame, refusing to die. He didn't know if he could ever fully forgive Serena. He didn't know if love could grow from soil this poisoned. But Catherine had always believed in second chances. She believed that people could change, that wounds could heal, that even the darkest nights eventually gave way to dawn. "Promise you won't stop believing in people," she'd said that last morning, flower on her nose, love in her eyes. For 7 years, Nathan had forgotten how to believe in anything. But tonight, watching the city lights blur through tears he hadn't realized were falling, he understood something. He hadn't just saved Hope Sterling that night in the frozen factory. Somehow, in ways he was only beginning to understand, she had saved him too. Her mother had destroyed his first life, but maybe, just maybe, she could help him build a second one. Nathan pulled into his apartment complex and sat in the darkness for a long moment. Tomorrow the journalists would publish their stories. Tomorrow the world would know about Riverside Development and Caroline Sterling's decisions, and the engineer who had been wrongfully blamed. But tonight, there was just the copper butterfly in his hand, and the memory of a promise he'd made to a dying woman in a frozen factory. "Don't leave me," Hope had whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," he'd promised. And somehow, against all odds, that promise had led him here, to the edge of something terrifying and beautiful and impossible to predict. Nathan got out of the car and walked toward his apartment, where his daughter was waiting, where his future was waiting, where Friday dinner was waiting. For the first time in 7 years, he wasn't just surviving, he was reaching.